Welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host today, joined by Tim the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
The recovering freedom variant O'Connor, bro. Oh my God, man, I was sick, like
Yeah,
legit sick. I'm a blessed guy when I lucky or my level of activity or how I eat or whatever, man. I go through life like don't get sniffles. I have some medical problems. I've had a couple serious issues, but like I don't catch the colds and the sniffles and even my allergies as I get older. Like my allergies are improving, but I picked up like just doing my job. I picked up a bunch of ticks and I thought I got them all, but apparently one got through my stellar tick picking fingers for a little bit too long and I end up with Rocky Mountain spotted fever.
yeah, that stinks, man. That's
Yeah,
uh,
it
get
was.
through. It's like you said, it's a bacterial infection, right?
Yeah, I think that ticks
Saw
basically. It's
that.
like either they issue a nerve messing agent or but I think that Rocky Mountain spotted fever is a bacterial infection that in is rapid acting in the human body, and it does major damage if at all left unchecked. Like if you like try to fight it on your own, um, I guess potentially fatal.
Oh
It's
man,
potentially debilitating. Um, and so, I mean, I'm joking. I'm feeling better, but I'm still a little bit worried that there may be some long-term consequences to this that I'm
that's
not feeling today because my fever finally broke. I had a like 5-day fever, man. Like
that's nuts. Yeah, that never happens as like
yeah,
an adult, right? And
no, it has never happened in my adult life ever. Like we joke about COVID. I had COVID. I was sick for a day, dude. And the second time I had it, the first time I had it, I struggled a little bit harder. But it would be hard to confirm that I actually had it because it was outside of the announced prescribed time frame that the government issued according to
Mhm.
the COVID schedule. As a matter of fact, entire portions of upstate New York, closed their schools and stuff like that due to a mysterious respiratory virus in early 2020 um,
Mm.
that I eventually caught and suffered kind of. I was able to work and stuff, but I felt bad for like 2 weeks, like somebody was standing on my chest and a fever that would be there, then it wouldn't be there. I treat it and I'd feel great, and then it would kind of filter back. So
Yeah,
I suspect that was COVID.
yeah,
And
could have
with
been a thing.
COVID and the flu, that kind of thing, kind of two combined kind of deal.
Yeah,
So,
might have had that, but I mean, some of the tick-borne diseases are no joke, like that and Lyme disease, and then the sickness that you can get where if you get like the Lone Star tick, it'll make you allergic to red meat.
oh my God, that would be that, how
Yeah,
would people be able to go on?
no,
Like,
it happened to my dad for a little while. It kind of went away with
yeah,
him, but it happened to him where like for a little while, like if he ate any red meat like at all, you'd get like sick. It's like just like there's a similar protein in something that exists in that type of tick, and it makes your body overreact to it, and it'll make
I'm
you
laughing, but that's not really funny. It's just that's
yeah.
horrible. That's
No, man.
horrible.
So I got that. Got like, I still like 40 pounds of meat in my freezer. I don't know what I do.
What am I gonna do with this?
Yeah. But speaking of blood sucking creatures, we're gonna talk some politics today, folks,
Oh God, yeah.
and especially the politics of oh goodness, RFK Jr. We'll talk about that his whole thing with Joe Rogan, and I
Yeah.
titled this episode "Debate Me, Bro." Um,
Oh, cool. It's good. And
uh,
you know what side I'm going to come down on probably. I'm very curious as to what side you're going to come down on. I hope it's an interesting conversation.
uh, yeah, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about Hunter Biden and maybe the submarine thing, maybe Amazon Prime. We got a
Yeah.
bunch of stuff to talk about today.
Hunter was potentially a hero for the Second Amendment, guys, and I think that's getting overlooked here.
Oh yeah, so we're gonna talk about libertarian hero Hunter Biden. All right, so we'll go in at 5 minutes. So 5, 4.
Now, an hour of clarity for exhausted people of our nation mired in toxic partisanship. Left versus right, us versus them. While we pay to keep our politicians fighting, how do we, the people, rise up and solve the great challenges of our time? We do it by embracing freedom and liberty. There may be no such thing as a free lunch, but this hour is as close as it gets. Welcome to A Free Solution.
All right, welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Willis, your host today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
I'm here, Kevin. And as I mentioned earlier, I am recovering. So, from Rocky Mountain spotted fever, which is, guys, just so you know, pretty serious kind of illness. But here I am doing a show because I love you guys, right? I love you guys. I think Kevin and I have interesting perspectives to offer you. And frankly, guys, just like I think they're important. And so we want to have conversations, and that's what we're gonna do.
Yeah, that's what we're gonna do. So thanks. The live audience got to hear Tim's whole explanation, his ordeal related to ticks. We talked about before the show. If you're listening on WYSL, thank you for being here. Appreciate you being here. If you want to catch the stuff we talk about before the show, during breaks, after the show, make sure you look up our podcast too. Look up A Free Solution. We have more content, sometimes stuff that we couldn't say on the radio occasionally, but sometimes that'll happen after the show. So anyway, we're gonna talk about a few different things today. We're gonna talk about the RFK Jr. Joe Rogan show that stirred up some controversy over the weekend, and we'll talk about Hunter Biden, libertarian hero.
Potential.
Potential. He could still be if he's brave enough, and then we'll see. And we'll talk about that whole submarine thing if we get around to it. Maybe the FTC Amazon Prime suit, and of course, if you're listening online, you listen to the live show. We're doing it Wednesday night this time. Make sure you leave your comments and tell us how you feel about this stuff. Or do you have other topics? Make sure you suggest that as well. All right. So anyway, let's talk about what happened with. This is the big thing on Twitter. I didn't see any of this on Facebook. By the way, I logged on to Twitter. Like I stayed off of Twitter like most of the weekend. I logged on for like a minute on Father's Day, and I'm like, oh, this sucks. I'm gonna close my phone.
I tried to share it, and so on Facebook, just to get it a little bit of people, just to get people to ask me what the heck it was about. But no one is. Twitter is different than Facebook. It always has been, but now it's kind of differentiating itself a little bit further away from Facebook, where Facebook doesn't really want debate, and Twitter may want it too much, but not.
Yeah, no, that's what it's geared for. It's geared for like the most engaging hot takes on stuff, right? So what did I see? I saw like the mostly libertarians with the hottest take on the RFK Jr. stuff, getting in front of my newsfeed, and the people replying to it, and all of the normal folks who feel the need to comment on everything. So I scrolled that for 5 minutes. It's terrible. Went back to Facebook. Facebook now mostly shows me like memes, not even always political memes too. A lot of libertarian memes still, but something's like, all right, cool. It's gonna show me a bunch of Star Trek memes today. Great, and then like nice Father's Day posts.
Yeah, which is safe and predictable, and if you want. The content's available.
I stayed on the platform longer. Like the Facebook's getting me to stay and look at the ads.
Facebook's okay. Like I make fun of it. I do like the rowdy, racky kind of bouncing off the walls kind of stuff that goes on Twitter, and I benefit from the dopamine when people pay attention to my polls, and we get good jokes going, and yes, dopamine hits exactly right. And Twitter has more of those available if you I think view the world like my brain likes to view the world, where it's just this chaotic mess and people are trying to make sense of it. And we're trying to learn how to be like nicer to each other while being mean to stupid people. Like Twitter's got that vibe all over it, you know?
Yeah, it's a lot of that. But meta analysis about the platform aside, tell us what the Twitterverse was talking about over the weekend, and we'll dive into like the policies because it is politics related.
It is politics related. Joe Rogan, who a certain aspect of the entire political spectrum sees as a rabid lunatic who is completely unpredictable and has no value to society. He's like completely a menacing disinformation spreader. Got into something of a conflict with a major proponent of the vaccine, Peter. I think his name is Peter.
What did it start with? He had RFK Jr. on his show, right?
Correct.
So that's what it started with, and because the discussion started with that, right? And then people were commenting on that show because RFK Jr. did RFK Jr. things. He talked about vaccines, of course, and made accusations about how vaccines cause autism and blah blah blah. Did all that stuff. Also, talked about how Wi-Fi like breaks down the blood-brain barrier and stuff, like some bonkers stuff. And yeah, lots of vaccine related stuff for the most part, though. A few more out there things. RFK Jr., of course, is one of the top 3 Democratic candidates for president right now. Joe Biden's still like most likely to do it if he doesn't drop out. But among people who are actively pursuing the Democratic nomination, he's one of them. Marianne Williamson is one of the other ones, and
right. So when it comes to RFK Jr. and his anti-vaccine stats, I find that what's being said about him doesn't, like, when you try to distill somebody's position into a tweet or your opinion of your tweet, or you feel as though he's attacked your personal science, I feel as though writing him off as an anti-vaxxer.
He is, though. Look at that. I think that's a factual statement to say.
What's that?
That's a factual statement to say.
I don't think it's a fact. I think if we asked him, and I think if we listened to the Rogan podcast, that we would come away with a different conclusion. Though, to be fair, I did try to listen to the Rogan podcast, but RFK's content to me is well, guys, he's not a great public speaker. I want to be honest with you. Like, he's a good conversationalist, but his voice does not grip you and want to have you engage in him. At least that's what's happened so far with me.
Right.
So some of my information about his official opinions, to be fair to you and everyone else, are a bit secondhand. All right. And from what I saw as presented, there was an offer by Joe Rogan to allow a free-form discussion on his podcast, which reaches 11 million people per podcast. I think that's a minimum, or that's within the first week that's what it reaches. 11 million people listen to him for 3.5 hours. Okay, so this guy got upset with RFK, made some comments to Joe, who this guy I believe had been on Joe's show. His name is Peter Hoytes, and Peter is a doctor, an MP, and a professor. Okay, so he's got both kinds of. He has a medical degree and is a professor. So he's like kind of a double doctor does that make sense? Like
yeah, he has like PhD and he does like a lot of like vaccine research type stuff.
Sure.
Too.
He does something cool, Kevin, by the way. He'll do his vaccine research and it gets released. There's no patents applied for it. Like,
he does. And he's done
that, that's a cool thing, right? Like, I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I have some problems with what I perceive with the philosophical science behind the mRNA vaccines. And I have some problems with the way that they forced the vaccine. And guys, Trump is at least a part to blame for this. Like, not even that part. Like this forced issue of this past vaccine and the new technology associated with it could cause reasonable people to ask questions and want legitimate answers. And it felt a bit like we weren't getting legitimate answers, and certain claims that were made about the mRNA vaccines have definitively proved to have been untrue, like that it would stop
Right.
transmission, and that was a big one, right? Like
Yeah.
they were
So
bastardizing people for not wanting a vaccine because it would stop transmission, and it didn't.
right. Yeah. And then that some of the early like initial tests made it seem like that was the case. And people, including this guy, Peter, I thought it was Hotez, but
Hotez. I
uh,
said, yep.
yeah,
Thank
but they maybe oversold their case. That's the nicest way of putting it.
Which
I
is
know
a
other
nice
folks
way
like
to put it.
they're lying about it, blah blah blah. I think they were excited and they oversold their case, which is not something you should do as a scientist. But
Right.
those are the type of folks that like news organizations wanted on, who are going to be like, you need to do this and it's going to work and it's 100% and it prevents trend, blah blah blah. Like the people excited about the scientists, like, well, actually, the data says that in these cases this might happen. We don't really know what's going to happen on a transmission basis. Like that type of stuff is kind of boring to
It is
most
boring.
people, right? Like, so yeah,
Right.
the folks who get brought on to news stations are kind of the polar opposites. Either the vaccine doesn't work and we're going to fight it and blah blah blah, or like you're a monster if you don't take the vaccine or if you ask any questions about it. And Dr. Hotez was kind of on that side, and he's like, oh, he made, and I saw some of the super cuts of some of the stuff he said where he was like, we're gonna get it in 2, and you need these 2, and oh, actually it's 3, and actually it's 4,
Oh,
and like
oh,
he shouldn't have made those claims in the beginning because there were and I've gone back and seen some of this stuff. There were like scientists who actually studied this stuff and were a bit more measured who are like, well, there's a good chance that it might change. So if COVID sticks around, like the flu sticks around, it might end up being an annual shot. So like we probably shouldn't be telling people they're only going to have to get 2 ever because that's not a promise that we are going to be able to keep.
right. And
Right.
so Hope has had that capacity to double down on the information that he had verified, and he wasn't kind of renewing his vigor and his
Right.
questioning of the. So he
So
doubled down, tripled down, and was like kind of a face or a spokesperson for the pro-vaccine group. He was
right.
on
Yeah.
many shows.
He became the guy because that's, again, that's the entertaining thing. And the reason why he ended up being like the focus of some of this is like in part because of that, right? So Joe
Right.
Rogan like ended up like responding to him, was like, I'll give $100,000 to your favorite charity if you go on this show and debate RFK Jr., right?
Yeah.
And he's not like particularly interested in that. And actually I kind of don't blame him. And I'll talk about like why in a
Yeah.
second, but but it's been interesting. Like he ended up becoming like the focus of everything.
He's enjoyed
And
it.
again,
Like I don't think he's a good communicator, but he's enjoyed the attention that he's got. And that's embarrassingly
well,
obvious, I would say.
I think almost everyone in the debate, which is why I ended up like shutting off Twitter and actually spending time with my son on Father's Day, was like, well, it's a lot of people who were like, oh, they make the right people mad, right? And like that's how he seems to be responding to stuff. Like, I made the right people mad, so I must be doing something right. And that's how like the RFK stands did out. The right people, the COVID vaccine pushers were mad. So like our side must be right about this. I'm like, nah, nope, I don't like any of this. I'm gonna go.
Your approach is pretty well based with me, Kevin. You know that. I do tend to react like a little bit more like, okay, if someone's ass has to get kicked in this debate, I do kind of want it to be Hotez's. Now, if he's the expert that he claims to be, right? This well-studied, well-versed author of several books that are all pro-vaccine, shouldn't debating an anti-vaxxer who is not well-versed in science, shouldn't it be an easy thing for him to do? And shouldn't the rewards of that debate, $100,000, which, as I understand it, had been like enhanced all the way up to like approximately $1.5 million would get donated to his favorite charity if he took this opportunity for this debate. Like,
Yeah.
shouldn't it be almost nothing to him? Like,
Sure.
I don't
Okay.
know.
So I'd say like if I were put in that a similar situation, I might say yes, just to be like, I even care. Like I'll sit there and like say nothing the entire debate if they'll still do $1.5 million to my favorite charity, right? Because that's a big
Exactly,
difference.
right?
But that being said, I have been in debates with some folks before who like I kind of mentioned like RFK Jr. He has some odd ideas about Wi-Fi, about like vaccines generally. You said he wasn't an anti-vaxxer. I think like he has said before that he is an anti-vaxxer. He said that his kids are vaccinated back in the day, but he's kind of moved away from accepting any vaccines as safe. And many people in that debate too are I've kind of moved into a general anti-vax position, including the Libertarian Party of Colorado, strangely enough, who said vaccines don't work at all. It's weird thing. I don't know why they're wading
That's
into
a
that.
weird take because there is definitely a science that was built upon, especially defeating smallpox. That started with variolation. It's like there's a definitive science that vaccines are good for the human body. Now, one of the things that gets
Right.
overlooked is
Oh, okay. I know. I've talked for a while, but and I kind of
uh,
threw out the whole Colorado thing. But let me like get to why. Like I don't think it's a good idea to debate this guy generally. And it's because
it ain't a good
it's
idea for Biden. I'll tell you that.
no, well, especially for him. But it's the reason why is because it's really hard to have like a debate with someone who doesn't really care to pull evidence from anything that's like based in actual reality, right? And I've had like conversations with folks like this before where they'll be like, well, here's this absurd claim, and then the work is on you to disprove that claim, right? Like they throw it on you like, hey, disprove this thing, I'm making this claim about mercury and vaccines, right? And you say, okay, I'll go find the research, I'll say what it is, I'll state what it is, and even if you can get through saying what the entire research and the evidence is, which might be hard to summarize in a debate format, if they even accept it, which they probably will not accept evidence, even if it's good and grounded in reality, it'll say, well, my source says this other thing. So here's another claim. And they'll do what's called a Gish Gallop, right? Where they'll just throw out claim after claim after claim after claim. And then it's on their opponents to dispel each of those claims, which is a lot more work than throwing out claims that aren't really based in any factual reality or are only based on like, well, some guy said that like this thing agrees with my opinion, and therefore here's my evidence, and that's just as equal as this study that exists. You get into the debate with that type of person, it's really hard to have the perception that you're winning. The perception that ends up happening is that the person just throwing out claims without evidence ends up looking more confident, looking more sure of themselves than the person who's like, well, actually, here's the evidence that says this, and here's how certain I am in this evidence, and here is what it is. And you've got to do the work to be concerned about actually being right. That's a tough discussion to have. And when
Look,
you're go ahead.
it is a tough discussion to have, but it's a discussion that you and I have every single day that we talk to people outside of our areas of expertise. Okay. And we don't have to deal with their most emotional claims repetitively thrown at us. We can simply end that conversation. So what you're saying is being stuck in that conversation could be detrimental to vaccine science or detrimental to Peter Hotez's image of himself. Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
what's the real issue there? Wouldn't you be
Well, the issue is making those two sides of the discussion like look equal when the format of the discussion isn't like prepped for. It isn't a good format for having a discussion about something that requires a lot of like complicated scientific evidence, right? Like
right?
a live debate, like you and I discussing an issue, like, we'll throw out like an example, right? Like if someone is like, a leftist and they're throwing out an example about, all landlords being evil, right? Like
Correct.
that's an
Okay.
opinion. And then like their evidence for like what that is, well, like they just want to developers want to build stuff and they want to take money and they want to overcharge rent, and like I know this because like my friend like had their rent double in this city, and like you and I have to have that discussion where we're like, okay, well, yes, I'm sure that is a thing that happened, but here's what the actual economic evidence says, and we do that. And again, I go on shows to do that. I've gone on the local NPR affiliate and had discussions with socialists who throw out claims about all sorts of companies, and it is a tough thing to do. And I get why you might not want to engage with someone who feels no need to back up their assertions with any actual evidence, because
Well,
then they just move on to whatever the next emotionally charged thing is, right? Because
right.
like when you're debating with someone's like, I know a friend whose kid died from this thing. like, I'm sorry that sounds awful. And then they're like, do you not care about that dead kid?
I'll be honest, that
Death?
one has caught me in the past. Like
Yeah.
that piece of a debate has caught me in the past. Like
Yeah, I've had that.
I get it where they dump something so emotional on you that you're shocked and you don't know what to say. But we do have one possible solution from the audience. Check this out.
All right.
Our friend Patricia says, Kevin, then I turn it back on them and ask them to cite their sources and back their claim before I even try to answer their claim. And then you ask them questions about that claim and see if, like, this is a successful strategy when you're talking with somebody, especially in an open form conversation about emotional based claims or claims that have no evidence or claims that are not strongly linked to evidence, but strongly linked to emotion. This is a good strategy to deal with that. And if I was Dr. Hotez and I was seeing a benefit of $1.5 million to a charity, I certainly would be willing to spend 3 hours with those guys. Maybe smoke a little pot with them and just like get down.
Maybe a little bit.
Like that's a thing.
All
that
right. Well,
happens
Tim, on that note, we're like a minute over already. So thanks again for joining us here on A Free Solution. We're gonna be back in just a few minutes. Talk to you soon.
Oh, can we fix that? Is that, or can we just adjust it?
No, it's fine. It's fine.
Okay.
The overtime, no.
Yeah.
it's all good. So, but yeah, I don't know, with this stuff, like I get why you wouldn't want to do it. Like again, I would probably do it. I'm not the person to do like this particular debate, but I've gone in and like just to name examples where I've had to deal with this, and I know why it's tough for people to want to do this. It's especially when it's something less like philosophically inclined and more like really evidence inclined on a sensitive life or death subject.
Sure.
But like I've gone in and talked to folks who are like, we should ban hate speech, right? And I've gone on shows where like they're like, hey, do you think people should be able to just like say the N-word, and should Nazis be able to parade through the streets? And I have to be like, well, you know, and I make my argument like against that stuff. They're throwing out really emotionally charged things, and you have to be able to counter with like what actually happens when someone you don't like has that power and can abuse it and turn it against you, which was the wildest thing, because we were having that debate in the middle of the beginning of the Trump administration. They're talking about how fascists took over the government, but also we should like ban hate speech. All right.
It's like, let's fight fascism with fascism double. And it's
by
like,
giving the fascists in power the power to regulate speech.
It's like,
yes.
Whoa.
All right.
Fascists really, here's my concern, like in a broad sense, that fascist is a personality type that it's a personality type that took religion and used it as a manipulation tool, not an allegory for symbolic stories that would improve everybody's life, which in a way that's what religion was supposed to be, in my opinion, right? Not a tool for making you afraid you're going to die unless you do what I tell you. And then we end up with this like, if they get to where they agree on something, bro, like all the fascist personalities in the world are going to unite and put their boots on the other 30%, and we're done.
Yeah.
That's it.
Now, but so I want to get to a couple of these questions too. We'll just do them during the break. So like, again, just going back to Patricia's thing, like, yeah, that is a great point. That's what you should do. Good people in a debate, though, and I've seen this happen with like the DSA folks do it drive me nuts. Where I'll say like, all right, what's you're making a pretty bold claim here. What's your actual evidence of that? And then they'll respond with more emotional vitriol, and some folks can see through that, but there's a lot of folks who can't. They're not going to do that. And in a debate format, it doesn't always like work, right? Like it doesn't always work to be like the rational, logical person, especially when like people are consuming this stuff for entertainment. And I will get the Shelly thing, because Shelly on YouTube is throwing out like a thing about like vaccines specifically. Studies done in the stages, short-term, mid-term, long-term. Can't know all the data because their factors aren't privy to like today's vaccines have the same ingredients. Yeah, I mean, the thing is that there have been a lot of long-term studies on a lot of vaccines, though, and people are still saying, well, we don't have enough long-term studies. And what about doing those studies compared to like saline tests? Like, well, why don't we do vaccine studies with like a placebo anymore? And I'm like, well, and there's a reason for that, and but people throw out that claim, and it is true that a lot of vaccine studies for well-established vaccines like the MMR type stuff, they don't do like placebo-based studies anymore because scientists doing these studies don't think it's worth the risk to give a placebo for something they know has worked and therefore could expose a child to a potentially harmful disease when we know that this vaccine like does a good job of preventing that disease, right? So, but you get in these things where, like, if you just throw out a statement and it's unchallenged, or you don't have the ability to effectively navigate a debate well, because you also have to understand who the moderator is going to be too. Are they going to give you a time to speak? Are they going to give you a time to respond well? Are they going to have a fair conversation? Are they going to challenge any of the claims of you or the other person? All that stuff has to come into play. Again, I would do it. I get why some people won't do it, especially if, I mean, it's like, go ahead.
Based on Hotez's communication style, he would come off looking poor in this debate, no matter what. And to be to your point, like, and to so everybody understands why, like, I get what Kevin's saying, and I kind of I have a little bit more respect for it now because I was not thinking it all the way through. He's going to be debating, a scientist is going to be debating a politician, right? And we know that politicians have absolutely no boundaries when it comes to winning an argument. Like, they have no boundaries. So if you guys, like, all of them are almost all of them, because I'm going to give a shout out to Thomas Massey later. Almost all of them are the same when it comes to they have no stops, no limits when it comes to winning an argument. Like my ex-wife.
Well, I mean, that is the thing, right? And like Donald Trump's that way too. Donald Trump, he will like do whatever it takes, and he's a big fan of ad hominems. That's his debate style. He's gonna insult you. Joe Biden will just like meander and like ignore whatever the subject is and talk about whatever he wants to talk about, which a lot of politicians do. Like, and in fact, like when I went to like, I've done like political trainings before, and that's what they tell you to do. Like, it doesn't matter what the question is, talk about what you want to talk about, right?
Yeah.
And like, if anyone pushes back with evidence, talk about what you want to talk about. If that means telling an emotional story, do it. Like I was sitting in trainings and was told this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's a Cloward and Piven school of politics, but it is effective, and it does win, and it does allow your charisma to dominate the day. So if you're slightly more charismatic than the other guy, you can win a debate that way. You can win votes that way.
Yeah. No, listen, that's what it is. And like, this is like setting aside like who is right in either of this too. Like, politicians tend to be better in debates than a lot of scientists who like feel the need to justify and explain every argument, right? It just
like
it doesn't come off as nice.
Something doesn't get talked about enough, and it's relatively controversial, and I better say it before we go back on the air just in case it's too controversial. But like the last few minutes of Joe Biden and Donald Trump's first debate, where Trump was knocking Hunter Biden and Joe Biden started talking about Bo, and it was like, and accusing Trump of like slandering his dead son. That was horrible. Like, horrible, like horrible politics. This guy is like evil, and he had it in his mind he was going to do it all night long. And our media in this country fails because they were not honest about what happened there. And so entire segment of the population was not honest about what happened there. It was really bad.
Yeah.
And then Trump still won that no, he didn't. But whatever.
No, he didn't.
No, he didn't. No,
there's the controversial part of your statement. Tim's taking a bold stance on whether the election was stolen.
Oh God. Anyway, it like I get skeeved out by watching political debates for exactly the reasons that you're talking about. And so I guess like I haven't changed my mind. That guy should debate him. I think he should be able to win it very easily because I respect facts, figures, and stuff like that. I do think there's issues with the mRNA vaccines and the force we saw from the government that are worthy of discussion repeatedly from now and until forever. Like whether, but that's not necessarily our goal tonight either.
Yeah.
You know.
No, all right. And like I said, the reason I wanted to bring is like I get why someone wouldn't want to do that. Is
Sure.
all. Again,
Yeah,
I
that's fair.
probably should, and he's probably not the guy to do it. If just from like a
That
handful
guy
of
gonna
interviews I've
lose
seen,
whatever debate he gets into. He's
yeah,
gonna debate with his grandkid and he's gonna lose. You know, like there's some like that guy is not. He's not a good verbal commentator. You know.
yeah. So that, yeah, I don't know it'd go well. There's probably people who can make the case a little bit more effectively. I would assume, right? And that's really what you have to have in that situation. Like the debating in a live discussion is like a skill that is separate from like being knowledgeable and even correct about a subject.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, why we don't necessarily get the most knowledgeable and correct politicians in power either.
We don't. We get the evil and most aggressive people in the world as politicians. With
Yeah.
rare exceptions.
Yeah,
Evil's not the right word, okay, but they are the most aggressive.
Yeah, more or less. Just to answer and say hi to a couple other folks. Laura says, Kevin, did you actually listen to RFK Unbroken? Yeah, I listened to a good chunk of it. I didn't listen to the entire thing. Like I watched like, I don't know, like 10 minutes of it, and I saw a few clips. But yeah, I saw a good amount of it. I've heard his stuff before too. A lot of it wasn't particularly new either. So
yeah, I think that's a fair question because I tried to listen to it, and like I said, like RFK's voice, it hurts my skull.
But
I feel bad saying it because he like is a genuine political figure. But again, I'm not even the fact that he was a Kennedy or is a Kennedy means nothing to me. Okay, I only care about who he really is, and I think, with all due respect to everyone, like saying that he's a Kennedy and like it has value, like we're talking about a guy that like ran liquor and supported fascism.
Yeah.
Like,
no, I don't. None of that stuff carries any weight with me. So that, like the only thing I don't get about is I think there are a lot of libertarians who like fawning over him, like over this issue, and that I don't get. Like guys, you need to look beyond this issue. Like even if you happen to agree with him on this, and I certainly don't. Like he's bad on everything else, like really, really bad at everything. We've done a whole segment on this before. He's not great on this stuff. So I don't get why people are saying like, oh yeah, he should. I hope he wins the Democratic nomination. He's the best. Maybe I'd vote for him.
I hope he wins the Democratic nomination just to show me that there's people that aren't simple-minded lockstep toadies because Biden is problematic, right? Like, or that someone makes a showing in the Democratic Party because other than Biden, because it would give me some hope for the future.
Yeah, I know. I'm no longer like in favor of. Well, what's the phrase? Anti-disestablishmentarianism. Like
I am.
Yeah. No, I saw what Trump did. I don't know that was better than the alternatives.
Well, it's not any worse. Let's be honest, because now we got the alternative.
It's no. Gary Johnson should have won. That's my counterfactual. But
yeah, no, that'd be great. That would have been better. It would have, of course, Will Weld probably would have like found a way to get him impeached and then be president. But just
come on, you're giving conspiracy theories to a counterfactual history.
I'm creating a conspiracy theory, and I'm pointing out the fact that his running mate was William Weld, and that the Libertarian Party stood for that. Okay, that's what I'm pointing out.
Yeah. But all right, we should get back soon. But shout out to our folks, David. No, I haven't read his book, and I'm not going to. Like, I ain't got time for that.
Books are money laundering. Like,
yeah, man,
and people buy all of the books. Like the numbers are made up. Thanks, brother. I appreciate it. I feel better than I did yesterday, which is good.
Yeah, but. And we should go back.
We should. We're gonna be,
the radio audience is gonna have missed so much.
I know. We should definitely let them know that too.
no, we should. We'll let them know. And if you guys are listening and you missed any part of this podcast, you've tuned in now. You can check out the podcast. Go download it. Go catch what we talked about before. But we're gonna go back in about 15 seconds, and we got 2 whole segments left. This is gonna be a late show, Tim.
That's okay.
Just how it's gonna be.
Other than
right.
I can't have beer because of my medicine.
5, 4, 3, 2. Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
I'm here, Kevin, and I'm getting the dopamine rush from that long conversation we just. All of you radio listeners, we'd love to have you join us when we go live on our Facebook and our Twitter and our YouTube. And we're going to move away from the vaccine topics. I can't remember which one we're going to go to, though, Kevin.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, I think we're going to talk about Hunter Biden. But again, WYSL audience, glad you're here. We had a whole other 15-minute conversation about all this stuff. But you're going to have to either go follow us on YouTube, on Facebook, or on the Kevin Wilson page, on Tim O'Connor page, or download the podcast if you want to catch that whole conversation. Make sure you follow us there. Plus, listener questions as well. But we're going to talk about Hunter Biden. They finally got him.
Yeah,
they got him. Tim,
I've been telling you guys they were going to get him and get him good, right? Like, look, this is, first of all, this is exactly the kind of got him I expected. I hope honestly that this investigation doesn't go away because it's A, hilarious, and B, like, look, what he did on the political level, I've been telling you guys, is mostly completely legal, and if he broke any laws there, he hid them well enough. He did, guys. Check this out. This is the kind of sweet deal you can cut when you're rich. You can go in, get charged, plead guilty, be done with the whole thing, and wait for sentencing all in one day. It's a miracle of modern technology and deep pockets. It's just great.
It helps. If you are well connected enough, they won't do the perp walk. You do your thing. It's all behind closed doors. You figure out whatever the deal's going to be. Yeah. I mean, he did still have to plead guilty to crimes, so it's a thing.
He did. He did 2 crimes. I got some things to say about the crimes. Like,
tell us about the crimes.
Well, he pled guilty to yeah. Well, what?
I broke Tim with the air quotes.
In strict parlance of the terms, Hunter has been charged with and convicted of crimes that normal, everyday people very rarely get charged and convicted of. And that, guys, is a charge related to failing to pay taxes. The IRS is, and this is going to sound weird, generally as lenient as they possibly can be to human beings who do not pay their taxes, as long as they don't lie about how much they owe. Now, I'm not saying that those are the appropriate charges for what Hunter got convicted of, or for the crime that Hunter committed, but that's what he got convicted of. And so there's actually people out there making the case that this is, they're really kind of wagging their finger very sternly at Mr. Biden because of his political, they're letting him know that they take these things seriously. And it's like, that's not exactly what happened here. Like, what happened here is that imagine if it was an everyday person and they were to take him to court, they would be throwing the book at him with tax evasion, tax laundering, money laundering, in hopes of getting some sort of minor conviction at the end of the day, because because prosecutorial overreach is real, guys. Like, that's what they would do. So,
but yeah, they can't do it with a high profile person like this. When your dad's the president, you're not getting the whole, like, DA or federal prosecutor, like, going after you, throwing aggressive charges at you, stuff that they know won't even stick. They're just trying to scare you.
Yeah, exactly. He didn't get that treatment. He negotiated everything ahead of time, went in, signed some paperwork. I think he had to post a bond. I'm not exactly sure, because he was actually convicted of a charge and could face jail time. So he may have had to post a bond at that point to leave the premises. But that's how justice is served, ladies and gentlemen.
And so, well, but let's talk about it. It wasn't just the taxes thing too. Let's talk about the,
Yeah,
we
we
got
got
a, we got a comment about this. What about the gun permit?
yeah.
And
Let's
and I
talk.
know like a bunch of the conservative folks like like Hunter Biden, they should be going after him. This political favoritism, blah blah blah. And what about Hunter? In relation to all the Trump stuff. All right, listen, the thing that he got had pled guilty to was that he lied about using drugs and lied on a federal form when doing all the stuff to get his gun permit, right? Which that's the crime. He lied to the feds, right? Like you are not allowed to have used drugs and then lied to the government about using drugs. And like the libertarian me is like kind of so what? like not I mean I get, yeah, you shouldn't lie to the feds. You shouldn't do that. And we talked about that in the Trump episode because that's kind of what he's getting in trouble for too. Is you shouldn't lie to the feds. Okay, you shouldn't lie in a federal form. But also, like, should that be an underlying crime? We talked
Well,
about this
he
with
was.
Trump too. Same thing. Like, should some of this be underlying crimes? The lying to the feds, maybe, but like the actual thing, maybe not. Should you be able to get a gun permit if you have used drugs before? Like to me, I'm kind of like, yeah, like you probably should. Like you should. I don't think that should
So,
be prohibited, especially for like
yeah, can
marijuana. I
you
mean, like he
imagine?
was he was doing a little bit more than that, but
Sure, sure. But there's a reality here, right? If you are a permitted gun holder and have smoked marijuana, you are supposed to surrender your weapon, like, because
yeah,
now you're a drug user, right? They're not talking about habitual drug, like there's no distinction between drug use and habitual drug use, and you're struggling with addiction. You should turn in your gun while
right,
you deal with your addiction, which would be, in a way, a caring and sensible position to take. Not that I would necessarily agree with it. I'm just saying that would be a sensible, caring position to take. They're
yeah,
saying if you use drugs, you can't have a permit for any kind of
yeah,
permitted
full
drugs,
stop, right?
period.
Like doesn't matter if you are like a regular user or you have an actual addiction, you have a problem with substance abuse. That's not what they're asking. Is have you used drugs,
What if
right?
somebody puts some in your coffee or tea, like by mistake? You like, and you end up knowing it. You now have to turn in your permit
Right.
and your weapon. Like
Yeah, let's do that.
that's the
If the
wrong,
CIA puts LSD in your coffee, right?
which
Like
could happen. My
could
God, they've done it.
it's a thing. Like guys, it's happened before. So
MK
like
Ultra.
don't say like, oh, that's crazy. No, that one has happened. But yeah, to me, like I don't think the underlying thing should be a crime. Again, his particular situation, like should like if we're talking hypothetically, like what should like an actual permitting process look like? To me, I'd rather have like almost have like the drug test. Like if you can't pass like a test while you like get the permit, okay, maybe right. Like
Right. I think that's
that would be at least more fair. Not
right.
exactly libertarian, but I think it'd be more fair to be like, all right, like if you can't pass this test in this moment, like when this is gonna happen, all right, maybe
It
try
becomes a level of
again later.
responsibility issue.
Yeah,
You might
right.
need
But
to be.
again, there's there's problems with people having addictions to legal drugs like alcohol and still having access to firearms. Like it's not, it's an existing problem that isn't applied consistently, right?
Right. Right.
Um,
Eh, well, obviously, lots of people get away with it, right? That lots of people, no one I know personally that holds a permit would use drugs and not turn in their weapon. I'm not saying that, right? I'm
right.
saying there's got to be people out there that have permits and occasionally recreationally use controlled substances and drugs. Yeah,
Yeah.
I would say that.
And like I said, I would go as far to even say like use it relatively responsibly, right? And I know there's some folks like
Oh,
you can't
sure. Yeah,
use
no,
drugs like in a responsible manner, but like to me, I'm like
they're
if
guns and
you're
they're drugs.
yeah, exactly. Both of those things. But yeah, to me it's like if it isn't necessarily a problem except for like if it leads into other types of behaviors that damage your relationships, your jobs, or your ability to be able to make good decisions, right? So yeah, to me though, like Hunter Biden, like those things, I'm kind of like I'm not really particularly mad about those crimes. I never really got all that sense about Hunter Biden to begin with because I'm mostly like it's the president's son. It's not the president. Like there's some shady stuff I know with the Burisma stuff and,
Look,
some of this other stuff. I don't like. We've talked about how we don't like it, but
yeah, no,
with this thing, I'm not really all that incensed about these particular, I guess, convictions now, right? Like
convictions. Yeah, he's convicted.
that's not
So now
alleged.
his job as a lobbyist is threatened. I don't know. I doubt it. Look,
No.
there's a reality to our political system that I find abhorrent, reprehensible, and I am angry about it. That nobody, not a Democrat, not a Republican, is talking about really fixing the levels of corruption that go into selling access to the U.S. budgetary process. Which, guys, like that's what lobbying is. Hello, and yes, Hunter was a lobbyist for foreign countries. And yes, his job for Burisma was baloney and it was payoff money and it was access money. But like, did he use it in illegal ways? That's something you got to prove. I know they're going to have an impossible time proving it.
Yeah.
There is, look, hold up though. There is an ongoing like debate about a pile of evidence that a lot of people feel like should be heard by the U.S. like the Judiciary Committee, and they haven't committed to listening to it yet. And it's of some of the people that have given the Bidens money, and it details conversations about what the money is for. And that, guys, if we get to hear those conversations, which they already have, like,
Right.
and so either they're buried or we're never going to hear them. But it was breaking on the same day that Trump got indicted, and like it almost got lost in the news. Like, what do you think about
That
that?
might be a thing. No, that might be a thing, and if that evidence is out there, the public deserves to hear it. It's
Like that money has changed hands is
Yeah.
undoubtable. Like we know that. All right. The reasons why it was changed hands and what it was detailed for, that
Right. Yeah. Is there quid pro quo there, right? Like
yeah,
what's
17
going
tapes,
on? Yeah.
Kevin. And the guy who's offering the tapes says, I got these to keep me alive after I got them their money. It's like would be pure blackmail. Like it details out. There's a CCR, it's a 1023, something like a piece of paper that has to get authorized by the process in the Congress before it goes to a judicial committee. It's not even a classified document, but they're not releasing it to the public. This is not like conspiracy theory. It sounds pretty good though, right? Like, but this is something that's real. That's going on
Why
right now.
wouldn't someone release it to the public though? I feel like there'd be a
Because
lot of political
it's in the
motivation to
hands
do
of the
that.
Congress and it's for congressional record, but it's not classified. And it's not the kind of CCR, if I'm using that term right, that gets classified. So
All right. Yeah, I'd have to know a little bit more about that because to me, I'm like, if it's not classified information and there's no penalty for releasing that information in the public, I'd imagine some ambitious Republican would just put it out there.
Well, Chuck Grassley, who's not known as a particularly ambitious anything, is actually the one calling for its release.
Oh yeah, I haven't read much about this specific thing. Like, it's not that I don't believe you. It's just I'm like I feel like I would have heard about it a little bit more.
No, you're hearing about it now, and I meant that.
Yeah, that's what the show is for telling me about the news.
Information.
I guess all the rest of you too, right? Like, but this is what I learned about the news. Tim tells me on a free solution.
We try to plan, and then Kevin, I've been like injured and listening to podcasts all day long, laying in my bed. Yes. Like there's all sorts of information in here, just dying to get out.
Yeah. Right. So we only have like a minute and a half left, but the one thing we didn't talk about, the one reason I'm kind of mad at Hunter Biden about this whole thing is they didn't bring the lawsuit to challenge his gun stuff on Second Amendment grounds because he was considering doing that. Could have been a libertarian hero.
It was literally a bargaining chip that he used to get this
could have done it.
Charges. He's like,
if he did that, I would have considered voting for Biden. Not Joe. That guy still sucks. But Hunter, I would vote. He would have had my vote.
I would have voted for Hunter too. My God, that would have been beautiful. It would have been beautiful, Kevin. Beautiful American, whatever you call it.
Yeah, I don't know, but that's the only thing I'm mad about with this whole deal thing is like we could have had a great, fun Second Amendment lawsuit challenging the denial of Second Amendment rights for drug users,
recreationally used drugs.
Yeah, we could have had that.
Yeah,
Could have been great, but instead we got this bargain of whatever happens, just normal stuff. I don't know.
yeah.
I mean, we'll see what the punishment is or whatever, but um, right. So on that note, though, we do have to head to a break. When we come back, we got a couple other things to talk about. We might talk about that whole submarine thing. We might talk about Amazon. We might go in a completely new direction. Y'all know
Yeah,
how it goes.
yeah.
All right. So thanks again for joining us here on A Free Solution. Appreciate all y'all WYSL listeners out there. We're going to be back in just a few minutes. Talk to you soon.
Yeah, I meant to gather up some information about that Grassley thing and warn you about it, and then it slipped out of my skull. And here we are. Dump it in your lap.
No
It was
worries. No
pretty
worries.
wild.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out later.
Yeah, it was pretty wild. I guess it made some of the mainstream network stuff the day Trump got indicted, but it kind of it still ended up all about Trump that day. It was just, so, um, but we'll do another show. It'll be fine. We'll get more
Yeah, we can.
information.
We'll get more information. We could do
Want to
we
do
could
an
do a bit more
auxiliary
on it.
show?
What's
Like
that?
like an extra show for our online audience only.
No, we could do some of that.
Yeah,
We haven't done one of those in a little bit.
that's true.
All right. I do see the story. I see on Fox News now about Grassley demanding the FBI turning over more information. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll look into it. Um,
Cool. So we got to get back to the next segment. Should we shift or
Schiff?
shift hits a lot of areas where I want to communicate with conservatives about.
Okay. How about Schiff?
Yeah. And it does cover it. So I'd like to do it fast, but
I
I
mean, yeah,
hate.
I almost forgot about the Schiff topic. We had a lot of topics this week.
I
Bunch of
know.
stuff. So we're gonna go back at 57. So we go back now 30 seconds. Talk
Yeah.
about shift stuff. We'll talk about, and maybe that'll last the whole segment. Maybe we'll talk about submarines. Maybe we'll talk about Amazon. Of course, leave your comments. See John and Shelly still active in the comment sections. Appreciate y'all being here. We're back in 10. Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, yours today, joined by Tim the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
I'm here, Kevin, and I just want everyone to know before we go into this next piece of conversation that there is not a person on the planet that hates Adam Schiff more than I do. There's not a person on the face of the planet that saw him as a Weasley liar more than I did from the minute he put his face in front of cameras to gain popularity about the narrative of Russian collusion. Okay. I knew that guy was lying. I could tell, and I could tell why he was doing it. And guys, on some level, we got some good news today. And where I want to take this is who was right and who was wrong. Okay. And in the sense of constitutionality, and as a libertarian, you guys know that I think that the biggest part of the Constitution is the Bill of Rights. I think that that's where real justice is found. That's where real discussion of human rights is found. And that the sum of the subsequent amendments, in effect, bastardize human rights. And in effect, especially the income tax stuff, guys. Oh my God. But anyway, every other one there may be some debate, but the income tax one, that is whatever. Okay. Adam Schiff is a horrible human being. He shouldn't be serving in the US Congress. Like, he's proven it over and over again. But my conservative friends, who, God bless you, I care about you, I want you to see things and I want you to be happy. They lost their minds when Thomas Massey stood against a $16 million fine and a censure that was going to be imposed by the United States Congress on Adam Schiff. That fine, in Massey's opinion, and I think in anybody else's opinion, and it goes against the premises of the Eighth Amendment, which was just championed by the liberal and my favorite conservative Supreme Court justices, this clause gets a little bit, or this article gets a little bit underrated and under discussed. But it's we can't impose punishments not within our realm of ability to impose punishments for crimes that are not crimes, whatever. Like the human being still has rights. Punishing Adam Schiff with $16 million fine would have violated the U.S. Constitution. I'm comfortable with agreeing with that supposition. So, therefore, I am in agreement with Thomas Massie, who I give a shout out to being able to communicate that effectively. But some conservative stalwarts are literally begging for a violation of the Constitution. And they're literally threatening one of the most consistent representatives for everyone in the country who believes in a limited government with all sorts of nonsense. And guys, he made me mad when he endorsed DeSantis right away, because I think that some stuff should play out better. Okay, like endorsing Vivek would have a bigger impact on turning the Republican Party in a more libertarian, smaller, focused kind of thing. And he has that kind of voice for me that I would have listened to him. But he endorsed DeSantis too early, and it looked very GOP-ish to me. But the issue that he stood firm on the monetary punishing of Adam Schiff was legit. And I admit that I'm willing to admit, I concede that Adam Schiff is a horrible person and that I despise him.
Well, there are two different things at play, right? There's, does a person stink, right? Are they a horrible person, bad politician, guy with bad opinions, whatever, right? Like, and to what extent should they be punished for those actions, right? And he's being censured for, specifically some of his actions related to his aggressive pursuit of the Trump-Russia investigation, right? And I agree with you that Thomas Massie's right on this one, and Thomas Massie is nothing if not consistently principled on stuff, right? He is. You know exactly where he's gonna go on stuff, right? Like,
I would so love to see Adam Schiff get fined $16 million.
Right.
He could like crowdfund it, and he would have paid it out of his campaign funds, or probably would have used some congressional slush fund to pay his fine that already exists.
Right. But still, I mean, it's so yeah, I'll mix it up for you a bit. Like Adam Schiff has like qualified immunity in a sense, right? Like I know I think so.
I like that.
But that's kind of what it is, right? Like something done in the legitimate pursuit of his duties of Congress, even if the results of those actions were bad or pursued in bad faith, etc., right? Like you can, because he's an elected official who's chosen by the voters who have to decide whether or not to hold him accountable or not for those actions. Like the most Congress can and should do is censure and or removal from like committees if they were to choose, which I think they already had removed him from a bunch of stuff, but and like in fairly extreme cases, like removal from Congress as well, which was, something they were considering for our boy George,
which would be totally unfair. This guy's done nothing wrong as a member of Congress,
right?
It hurts me to say stuff like that, but I gotta say it, man.
Yeah.
Like, he was the best virtue signaling person in the world to accumulate a large number of votes in a place where that was iffy. Like, saying he was a Republican wasn't going to be good enough. He had to be a gay, tech savvy, victim of violence, near victim of violence kind of Republican. Like, that's who he had to be to make sure he got elected. And he did it.
He did it.
It just was who he had to be, man.
Who he had to be.
And he was a little bold with his articulation of his lies. Like, he was a little bold.
I still love that joke. It said, "You said I could be whatever I wanted," and then you go back with, "No, not like that.
No, not like that.
No, not like that." No, but so again, something like and something we had talked about like a while ago is like the expulsion of like those Tennessee legislators, right? Like, and in that case, like comparing those two, right? The actions of him who like and pursued stuff on a committee, did stuff maybe don't like, don't agree with. I don't know that it rose to the level of disrupting Congress and the proceedings of Congress in the same way that would justify like an extreme action, including a
Yeah,
fine, right?
sure. Like here's where I don't think I did a great job of explaining a certain issue of Congress doesn't have the authority to impose fines on an individual when those fines
No.
aren't already delineated by law. Okay.
Right. Yeah. Like Congress, there's a fancy name for this too. That like the constitutional perspective on this is that like they can't go after any individual, any one entity, like in any sense.
Right.
So not just like a
Unless
member of
it's already
Congress.
like legislated,
Yeah.
like if they had decided in a rule session that you could financially punish someone for lying on the floor of Congress, and God forbid they ever put something like that in, then they could impose these fines on Adam Schiff.
Every member of Congress is suddenly broke.
I mean, obviously it's absurd, right? They won't ever write that law. And
No, but yeah, but they can't say like, they could say, okay, if you walk out to the floor of Congress without your shoes on, that is a $500 fine, right? And
exactly.
it can't be a law, a rule written to punish any one individual person. It has to be like a generally applied and consistently applied rule, or at least in theory could be a consistently applied rule for future actions.
Yeah. And actually, you know who stood up for Adam Schiff I'm sorry, for Thomas Massey? And I was a bit surprised because she seems a bit like um, an emotional leaning conservative where these issues don't really reach home with. But Marjorie Taylor Greene kind of wrote an impassioned defense of Thomas Massey. And I was like, am I reading her right? And then I'm like, you posted a meme once, like the worst person in the world said something you agree with, don't feel too bad about it or whatever, like it was a little bit weird for me to go through that.
Yeah. That's strange folks coming together in that situation.
Maybe she's learning, maybe that's good. I don't know. I don't know. She's very pro-Trump, and people that are pro-Trump are getting, and on this issue in particular, guys, you're anti-constitution. Like Thomas Massey made a constitutional defense of the issue, and I'm very glad that Adam Schiff has been censored. But what Congress has done to itself over the years, or what we've allowed it to do to itself, has become such a clown show. Like if a congressperson was censured at some point in our history, he would easily have been primary defeated by someone from his own party, because that was an embarrassing thing. Now he gets censored and 50 Democrats stand up and yell at Kevin McCarthy, and then AOC posts a clip of it and says, look, Kevin McCarthy has lost control of the House. And it's like,
well, yeah,
what?
I mean that's how politicians act nowadays. Like, oh, you're getting punished by the enemies, you must be doing something right. Like, and the thinking doesn't go beyond that. And Republicans will do that stuff too. Again, we talked about at the beginning of the show, but Republicans do this stuff. Oh, like the right Democrats are mad at me, therefore I must be doing something well. Please donate to my campaign.
Every Twitter post by a Democrat and most by Republicans always ask for a little bit of money, just in case. In case you agree with what I'm saying right at this moment.
Always be fundraising. Hey, I said that I help campaigns fundraise. Is what it is. But
every person that's offered political advice has said every time, ask for money. Every time you're selling a service, it's like, oh wow, that's so weird, because I knew that it wasn't going to be money, wasn't going to be magic, but also I am not the guy that can ask for money just because you like my opinion. But maybe I can come around on that.
Yeah, I don't know. If you want to win, you might have to, Tim.
Right, like
we would accept truth.
Yeah, we'd accept sponsors on our podcast. We'd love that. We would. We absolutely would. Just saying.
Yeah, 100%. All right. I don't know. We got all of 3 minutes left, Tim.
Okay, so we got to talk about what social media has done to the world. We're not going to be able to get into the details too much of the whole Titanic submarine mishap, other than it's disappeared we're gonna have to start presuming these people are dead. But
Yeah.
the stepson of one of the victims of this situation took this opportunity to make an absolute freaking mess on social media. He like tweeted out that he's going to a Blink 182 concert, got like tagged all the band members, got to an argument with Cardi B, and then like was on OnlyFans and everybody knows who he is, and he's like asking some lady to,
Why are we talking about, like, I'm not us, but like we're talking about the people talking about this guy.
right.
Why is it a thing?
Why are we paying attention to him? That's the point I was going to get to. And like,
Yeah.
why? That like it's sad what's happening to this kid. He's obviously kind of broken already. Like, let him let him deal with his own ignominy. Like, just ignore him.
Yeah,
Just
right. Like
ignore him.
there's no reason we need to put the limelight on this dude who like apparently has like high functioning autism. Like he's had his own like other
He
problems
must
in
be
the past
libertarian.
too. Yeah, right. Terrible, a terrible joke.
Oh.
But
Go
yeah, but like it's another one of those things like we have to obsess over this stuff. All right, so like an international tragedy is happening. Like let's dig into every detail of like anyone who knows anyone associated with this and find out about them and start to build like the 5-minute biopic of all the lives of everyone that is involved in this. And if we find out they're cancelable, then like, hey, suddenly someone who never asked for this, who may be in their own process of grieving, is dragged into this situation.
Yeah.
I mean, grieving, or I mean, you can argue dealing with stuff responsibly, not responsibly. Hard to say. Like, I'm not here to judge any of that stuff, but
Sure.
yeah,
He was asking for attention for being,
it was.
associated with a tragedy. That on some level is understandable. The rest of it, like the response and everybody getting interested in it,
No.
deciding whether his way of asking for attention from the tragedy was appropriate or not. Like, let's mock him a little bit, but like let's also realize
All right.
like social
Time to
media.
move on. I'm hoping by tomorrow, hopefully by the time this airs and WYSL is moved on. But speaking of WYSL, we are out of time for the radio show. Thanks again for joining us here on A Free Solution. There's going to be a little bit more show afterwards too. If you're listening online or if you're listening on WYSL, make sure you subscribe to the podcast. Have a wonderful night, folks. Take care. All right. Yeah.
Yeah, so like this social media phenomena is just, it's brutal, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, that's thing. I know way more about like the side story of this situation than I really cared to. I mean, like that. That's funny. The on like the submarine thing in general, like it's a bit of a strange story because it's one of those like buyer beware situations. Like, well, yeah. So we'll talk about that situation. Like, the submarine was a bit sketchy, right? There's like news reports on how it might have been a bit sketchy before, and there's like a whistleblower situation in there, and
right. Is that like someone pointed that out to me and I didn't have any time to do any research on it. And I go down conspiracy holes pretty fast. So I wanted to just,
yeah, I mean, like the rough story is that there's someone like who is accusing them of being like a little bit too lax about pointing out safety concerns with taking down this 5-person submarine down there. I mean, like actual legitimate concern, like the people saying like, oh, they're using like a a controller to do that, and that's like goofy. Like, it's actually not that silly to use a controller to do stuff.
No. I heard a breakdown of how they move the sub from place to place. I'm like, wow, it makes sense,
What's common? I mean, like the military will supposedly use like controllers for some of their stuff too, just because like it's an intuitive and well understood like interface, and if you get what each of the things does, then it works, right?
Yeah. Any kind of verbal communications and verbal communication systems are not flawless from surface to below water. Like
Right.
there's none that work really well.
Yeah. But so there's all that stuff. I mean, the other stuff where people are like, "Oh, I'm glad these like rich people are dead." Like those folks suck.
Gross.
That's gross. Yeah, like
That's
that's
gross.
it's a gross thing to do.
What are you, a communist? Like, oh, don't answer that.
Yeah, you know the answer to that. So that's all gross. You know, I got in a discussion with one of my coworkers today who's like, man was never meant to go down there. If God wanted us to be on the bottom of the ocean, he would have put us there. What are we doing down there? Should we be exploring the bottom of the ocean, Tim? Or is that just spitting in the face of God to try to even
Okay,
bother
so
going down there?
that's kind of the, I alluded to this earlier, right? Like there's discussions of religion that just that are beyond me, right? Like God, that whole knowing what God wanted when the stories that God has handed us have been abused by man, God purportedly handed us have been abused by man. Like no one has the right to say what God would or wouldn't want. And if God exists, like his rules could be clearer. He could say, like, but that's not in any way, shape, or form of what I view what religion was, kind of started to be,
Right.
nor if there was a God, would I think that he would prohibit us from exploring the
Yeah, I don't
bottom
think
of
so.
the ocean. Like I just
Yeah.
don't see it that way.
No, I didn't take that discussion like all that seriously. Like we should be prohibited by God's will to do that to go down there. It's more
What
like
she
it.
she might have been touching on though is that religion, successful uh, adherence to religion, forcing adherence, does in fact rely on using people's fear of death. Like we
Well,
need.
sure. I mean, it's certainly a thing. Again, I don't think that was the point my coworker was trying to. I think the point she was more making is like, if you go down there, we weren't really meant to be down there, so you have to expect bad consequences. But to me,
That could be. I
yeah,
think
like that. That's how I took it because we also talked about space too, and she's like, I don't think man was meant to go up in space. I'm like, no, we weren't, but we're gonna do it anyway, and that's awesome. I love it. Like, wait, like space is hostile, right? There's radiation, like your blood and your body does weird things in 0G. Like
Yeah.
every planet outside of Earth, like wants to kill us and kill us quickly and painfully, but we're gonna say screw it. We're gonna defy the odds. Shake our fist at the sky,
Oh, I love
and
it.
say like we're gonna go live on Mars. And I think
I
that's a
am
good thing.
inspired by that
I'm like an
spirit.
optimist about this stuff.
Yeah.
And same thing about going to the bottom of the ocean. Like, should we be doing that? Heck yeah, we should. Why? Because we can, because we want to see what's down there, because maybe we'll discover something cool or terrifying. Maybe we wake up Cthulhu and the world ends. But
We should wake up. No, wait, hold on. Look, I think the point is that we shouldn't like live in fear of our environment. We don't necessarily have to conquer it and beat it into submission either. But like like you're saying, we could find that one rock that like we put into a little like glass jar and we have electric for 1,000,000 years. I mean,
yeah,
conjecture is what runs the human species. You know what I mean? Like anything
yes,
could be down there.
it is. And without going too deep down the religious rabbit hole, Patricia on YouTube said, I'd ask, why did God make the ocean and us smart enough to explore
You
it?
know,
Yeah, I mean, and that's how there's a lot of Christians who think that way, and that's I get it and I agree with them. That's
yes,
if you're going to believe in God, God gave us the tools of intelligence, and we were meant to explore and learn and build and
why
challenge.
give us curiosity and opposable thumbs, man? Like,
Yeah,
hello, it's obvious God wants us to take things apart and put them back together, man.
yeah. But yeah, I don't want to get too deep down to like the theocratic debate stuff, but
No, we'll do
just
that on
mostly
another
like
time.
yeah, mostly wanted to close the loop on some of the submarine stuff. And I think we're gonna probably call it a night because we've already run kind of long relative to where we are. Unless there's something like you really
No,
want to talk
I'm
about.
good, man. I'm my brain is spinning 1,000,000 miles an hour. I can tell I'm physically on an upswing, but I could hinder that by staying on this doing talking for too long. So I'm okay with ending the show tonight. Left a couple things hanging. I do think we should consider scheduling um, an auxiliary show or a show that's not for the radio and just chilling it out and making fun of everybody or something, you know?
Okay, that could be a good time. All right, sounds good. Thanks, folks who listened today. All y'all who are still listening on the show, appreciate you being here. We're gonna call it a night.
What could possibly go wrong?
What could possibly go wrong? Steve
Everything.
Becker says.
Apparently.
Yeah, you know, that's why you sign the liability forms. You gotta know. But all right, have a good night, folks. Take care.